Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I'm here today with my guest co-host,
Jordon Ferber.
Yes, love it. So my mom can't join us, so Jordon said he would, step in. And I've known Jordon for many, many years.
A long time.
Yeah, very long time. We've done a lot of shows together.
We sure have.
Done a lot of podcasts.
Of these. We've done radio together.
Yeah. And Jordon, you have a podcast yourself.
I have a podcast. It's called Where's the Grief? I interview mostly comedians and performers who have experienced tragic loss. I've interviewed you on the show.
Yes, you have. That was a great interview.
I've interviewed a couple of our panelists on the show today as well.
Yeah, so last night, Jordon and I were on the phone saying, okay, what should we do this show on? What should we talk about? And we are so about building awareness for sibling loss. And he said, I love this title, Big Boys Do Cry, Guys Get Real About Sibling Loss.
Yeah. Listen, I cried when you asked me to co-host the show with you. Just a little tears of joy. Such an honor. But yeah, I think it is, there's no blueprint for grief, and I think that men in particular are taught not to cry. That is one of the number one things that I think across all cultures, men are taught to hold it in, to not show their emotions, to be stronger, quote unquote, and to not cry in public. So I think, for me anyway, that held me back in a lot of ways. Being able to be open emotionally and be comfortable crying was part of my path towards moving forward.
Well, I love it, and I want to hear more about this from you and from our guests. And
yes.
So, do you want to introduce them, or do you want me to?
Sure, we can.
Okay.
We can take turns.
That sounds great.
First, we've got Keith Singer, who we've also known for a number of years.
Yes.
He runs the Staten Island TCF Sibling chapter, and runs workshops at the national conference every year. And I don't know if I've seen him cry in a number of years personally, but we're here with Keith today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it.
And we have Jason.
Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki.
Look at that.
Yes.
Very impressive.
Shine Yoga.
Yes.
And Jason is very into the yoga world and using yoga to heal.
Absolutely.
And doing energy healing. You have a master's degree from Columbia in counseling.
Yep.
And you also are with doTERRA.
Yes, doTERRA essential oils. Yeah, they're a very high-grade therapeutic, grade essential oil that can help anything.
I love this, and you know what I love about yoga too is it opens you up. There are heart openers you can do, which will help you to get more in touch with your emotions.
Yeah, the physical body holds on to that grief, and if you need to find a way of physically letting it go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really helpful.
Yeah, and we also have Kevin Bartini, another comedian, friend of mine that I met in comedy many, many years ago, and through our processes have found that we are also part of this unfortunate club.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you very
Kevin.
much. Thanks. Yeah, Jordon and I go back almost 20 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
We started like open mics together, and I didn't even know when Jordan's brother died. I'd known you 3-4 years through
Right.
that, and I didn't know about that probably for like 10 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the first thing is how personally I kept it to myself and didn't share with people or tell, and I didn't make it part of my identity or anything. So I had no idea that we had that in common.
That's interesting that you found out. I wonder how. Do you guys remember how you found out?
I think Jordon probably when he started doing his podcast, started asking around about, do you know of any other comics who lost a sibling or a parent or something? And someone probably had mentioned.
I think I saw it on your Facebook page. You posted a thing about Andrew on the anniversary.
Okay, maybe that was what it was. Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of a longer post, and I hadn't seen you post anything about that prior, so I reached out to you.
Right.
I love this idea of using social media and Facebook in order to kind of connect and talk about your feelings and talk about your siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys done that? I mean, have you found that has been helpful, or?
Well, I found the one thing that I always am on the fence about is that sibling day. There's a certain sibling day where everybody's posting pictures of their siblings, and I always jump on and make sure that I post a picture with Lauren, my sister, and so. But it's always that like tentative. I always am a little tentative before I hit the post because just knowing if people are going to ask me about it or people that don't know me so well, like. So it's always a sore spot for me.
Not sure, not knowing how people are going to respond.
Yeah. Because I talk about my sister like she's in the present moment, and some people don't realize that she's gone. So
it opens up that door
to
that conversation to have to go now relive that or rehab that conversation another time, talking about it and re-going through it again.
Well, it is interesting. It's like when people ask you how many brothers and sisters you have, and you have to kind of stop and say, okay, do I want to go down this road with this person?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, or do I want to not? I mean, it's like Scott existed, but I don't know if I'm ready to put it out there with this person.
Right. And how comfortable are you possibly breaking down and having a crying fit with somebody? How comfortable is that person going to be with you having that in front of them as well?
Yeah.
I think that's always a dynamic you have to worry about.
And I think sometimes that's why it takes like 10 years just to find out from even a good friend.
Yeah.
You know, I have a good friend also that it took us a long time to kind of make that connection as well. So it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
More so within guys too. I would say also, I think guys tend to have this hold it together, need to, it's not natural for me to kind of be open with feelings, but I think it definitely took a long time to kind of figure out and get to a point where I was secure enough to, not care as much about sharing feelings and showing emotion. I know you mentioned, earlier about crying, but yeah, I mean, I've come a long way to even where I am, because before I lost my sister, I'm completely different than I am today.
Are you more emotional now than you used to be?
I am more empathetic. I'm more emotional. I would say, yeah, I'm more open to expressing feeling, more open to sharing, and not feeling that that I'm a wuss. Not feeling that I'm soft, or I don't mind sharing that. Yeah.
So what kind of messages do guys get? I mean, I'm a female, so about emotion, about crying in public, about crying around people.
Well, I think just in general that men are supposed to be strong and hold it together, suck it up.
Walk it off.
Walk it off, right? Shake it off, and get over it. So yeah,
be a man.
Be a man, right?
And as a sibling, we always talk about how you're told you have to be strong for your parents.
Yeah.
I love the name of your workshop at Compassionate Friends.
Yep. How's your mother? That's the name of my workshop. So that is typically the number one question we get.
Yeah.
It's very often how is the thing is that they ask how's your mother without ever asking how are you.
Yes.
Right.
I remember I did a sibling loss show once, and we had an audience, and somebody stood up and said, how are your parents doing? And I was like, okay, this is a sibling loss show, but it was so typical. I mean, it's not a bad question, but then I end up talking about how it was very hard for them. You have a good answer for that when someone says, how is your mother?
Oh, in the begining, those first few years, people would say, oh my God, your parents must be devastated. I said, I imagine they're doing about as badly as I am.
It's true. Yeah, right. It's a good response.
Yeah. I think it's such a hard thing to deal with, too. As I said, there's no blueprint for any of this. I think we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up for how we naturally feel about it, because we don't have any reference point for it, and because so many outside forces are telling us what we should be feeling or doing. It's hard to get a handle on it for ourselves, on what the right pathway is and what the appropriate manner of expressing that stuff is.
Sure.
So how did you guys express your grief early on? I mean, it's interesting because everybody right here has had siblings die in car accidents.
Yeah.
All within, we figured out within like a couple of years span, or 6-8 month span for the three of us.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very.
So how old were all of you when your brother or sister died?
I was 21. I was away at college.
I think I was 26 or 27.
26.
And I was a month shy of turning 20.
Month shy of 20.
And I was 24.
I was 20.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're all in our 20s.
Yeah.
Our sibling suddenly dies.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because you're in your 20s, you're kind of trying to carve out your own life for yourself, and then having a sibling die all of a sudden kind of engulfs you in some ways. It kind of brought me back into the family at a time where I was really pulling away from the family.
For me, I ran right back to school and didn't deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's how I dealt with it, was by not dealing with it, which then ended up creating problems. I just kicked the can down the road to, cause issues later on.
Right.
So you put it on hold for a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you were here in your 20s trying to live a person in their 20s life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also adding on the dynamics, right? So being a guy, but to Jordan's point, how do you deal? They always say you have to deal with it. Well, what does that mean, right? How do you deal with it? And how do you also deal with it while being 20, 21 years old? How do you deal with it while watching your parents or there's so many different things that you go through in general. But now add this, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like, define deal with it. I mean, deal with it for me, for for probably the first 17, 18 years of it was just get to the next day. Just get past, suck it up. Be more of that Gary Cooper strong silent type. I didn't talk about it. I spent all that time, self-medicating and drinking to forget and everything else. But it wasn't until I hit a wall, like at about 18 years in, Once it got to the point where my brother had been dead as long as he'd been alive, and then at that point is where I kind of had things changed and it started to even get worse. And I started to think of it kind of like in like Stephen King terms, like I'd spent 18 years with like my dark passenger with me, and so it wasn't about, for me, it was never about dealing with, it was not about sharing my grief and hugging everybody and connecting on a personal level. Oh, you're going through, it wasn't. It was focus on my career, focus on my comedy, focus on, no, don't feel that right now, let's smoke a joint. Okay, let's do this, let's do that, and not deal with it. And then...
So what made you finally decide to deal with it? What made you, why did you decide to deal with it?
It started to turn, it turned dark. I started to have, I was never on medication or anything else, antidepressants. I didn't do because I thought, I was afraid of, as a comic, how that would change the way my mind works.
That makes sense. You don't want to take the edge off in a way.
Yeah, or whatever. I just don't want to...
You want to be sharp and
I want to mess with the way my brain works, the way I want to mess with it, and in the fun ways. But no, we got to a point where after about 18 years, there's also the circumstances around my brother's death. I carried a lot of guilt personally, and I felt at the point where it got to the, where it was 18 years and 6 months, however, to the day, I decided that I had beaten myself up. I gave myself a lifetime sentence.
Wow.
And I beat myself up for one of his lifetimes.
That's so interesting.
And I was really realizing that it was affecting my marriage, it was affecting my relationship. I really hit a wall. I started to have like suicidal thoughts that I'd never had before. And that was when it was like, okay, we're gonna get some pills and we're gonna, and that's when I called Jordon up and I was like, I'm ready to go to Compassionate Friends and talk to some people and
get some peer
those
support.
things. Yeah, peer support and that kind of stuff, because I realized that trying to just suck it up,
right.
It doesn't go away. You don't digest it and get rid of it. It's just, it was my dark passenger, and I had to. So now what?
That's an interesting metaphor. I like that metaphor.
Yeah.
What about you, Jason? What's coming up for you with this?
I remember, I consider myself a fairly emotional person. I was doing yoga before Lauren passed, and I was really working on kind of opening my heart, as you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. And then to have this happen is just like tearing it right out of my chest. And I needed to isolate a little bit. This needed to be something that I did a little bit behind closed doors for a while. Like my tears, my crying had to be done alone.
Was that hard on your parents? Did they want you to do it with them, or were they
well,
worried?
I'm sure it was. I mean, I didn't really give them the option, to be honest.
Because I keep hearing parents say, we're worried about guys. And
yeah, but the thing is that getting the message, I have to be strong for my parents, and you can't,
exactly.
and letting them see me, like seeing me cry in front of them, for a man can be considered like a weakness, and I didn't even want to go there.
Right.
And so it really became a self thing that I had to do alone.
So you grieved on your own.
Yeah. Well, yoga was a very, very key part. Because like I was able to get more in contact with my breath and more in contact with my body, and just be okay with the way I was feeling, and just let those emotions be the way they are at that moment. So, and focusing on the breath is really key to making that happen.
It is, and it sounds really simple and easy, but it's so important. You can breathe through anything.
Right.
And I am such a proponent of yoga. Yeah. Because I think there's a myth out there. It's like, I'm not bendable. I can't touch my toes. I don't know how to do anything. I'm not a yogi.
Right.
It's like, you don't have to.
No.
You can go to a restorative class.
Yep.
and you almost feel like you're not doing anything. You're like, I'm laying on blankets.
Yeah.
But afterwards you leave, the colors look brighter, the
Yep.
world seems brighter. You don't seem like you're in such a dark place anymore.
Well, and I think now with the diversity of yoga out
Yeah.
there are so many different styles and so many different variations, and teachers bring in their own, their own beauty into it, and there is a style of yoga for everybody, whether you're, a kid or whether you're 90. There's a place for yoga because it really meets you where you are, and I think that's a good lesson to learn, is just to be where you are. So that this way, whatever you're experiencing emotionally, physically, mentally, it's all okay anyway.
So I know you were all in your 20s when your siblings died. Did you feel like your loss was acknowledged? Did you feel like you got enough support, or did you feel like it was minimized?
I don't think it was necessarily minimized, but it was definitely not welcomed.
Okay.
I felt like my peers at that time in your 20s, nobody that I really knew had lost a sibling, and certainly nobody I knew had, not even that many people I had in my life at that point had lost even parents. Maybe a couple had lost grandparents, but it wasn't really on that same scale. One of the things that I talk about in my group a lot, one of the jokes I bring up is that, friends of mine would call me up and say, oh, come out to the bar tonight, we're having a party, whatever, but don't, end up crying at the bar or whatever. And I was like, well, do you want me to come or not? I'm probably gonna, I get a couple of drinks in me, I'm gonna get a little emotional.
We want old Jordon. We don't want grieving Jordon.
Right, but that's the only one that exists anymore, and it was, and I felt like sometimes because I didn't give myself a lot of permission to open up about it, that it was when I started to have a couple of drinks and I would get a little emotional, it would come up, it would just bubble to the surface, and I didn't really have a lot of control over when it would strike me. It's not, I never felt like you could really schedule grief. I'm going to cry from 1 to 2:30 and then I'll go to the store. It's like, no, you
Then I'll go to the party and have fun.
Right, exactly. So I think it was harder. Friends of mine wanted to be there for me, but they had no idea how to do it, and I was no help to them either in terms of how to tell them what I needed.
That's what the problem is too. I think people will come to you and say, if you need anything, tell me. And it's like, I don't know what I need.
Right.
So how can I tell you?
Right.
But I had the same situation. I was in college and I was in a sorority, and when my brother died, I was not fun. I used to, people used to say, find Heidi and you'll find the party. And, and once he died, it was like, no, I was grieving, and I was not fun Heidi anymore for a while. And that bothered people, because I was 20 and they wanted to have fun. They didn't want me to be grieving. Like you said, had never had a sibling die.
Yeah.
None of my friends. What about you guys, the rest of you?
Well, I think what's worse is also those that tried to understand. I think because they related to a pain they once felt or a loss they once had. And generally, sometimes there's radicals losing a dog, or they lost a grandparent. Now, definitely there's pain there, but it's definitely different relationship and dynamic, where it can also come across a kind of obnoxious a little bit, that they feel like, oh, I know how you feel.
My
not
fish
really.
died.
Yeah. Right. My dog, but the dog was like part of the family for 18 years, so it's. Yes, I understand you were sad. I 100% agree. I've lost dogs, and yes, it is very painful. But it's a little bit different than losing your sibling, and that kind of created a lot of it added to the anger.
Right.
That I was already going through, and
You were angry.
Sure.
And what were you angry about?
Everything. I didn't even know. I think that was what the turning point was. I didn't even know what I was angry about. Like I used to think about, what am I so angry about? I don't know. Like people would say things like that that would just make me so angry, and I'm saying, why? I kind of stumbled onto dealing with the change that allowed me to open up to share emotion. I think basically what happened was that I ended up inadvertently helping somebody else, and it kind of opened up my eyes to, wow, that it felt good to be able to help somebody else. And I wasn't an expert. I wasn't something I learned in school. It was all I did was share what worked for me.
Right.
I didn't do anything special other than
Peer
talk
support.
about what I did, and then all of a sudden, to find out that it really changed and helped change somebody's life. It was like, wow.
And maybe diffuse some of your anger, did it?
Oh, absolutely.
I was angry also,
oh, yeah.
so I can identify with this.
Oh yeah, no.
I
without
was
a
mad
doubt.
as hell because I didn't want to live in a grieving family, and this wasn't
Right.
the life that I signed up for.
Sure.
I didn't want this life. It sucked, basically.
Right. I didn't want to have to miss my sister. I didn't want to have to have, the uncomfortableness when people they talk about her or they not talk about it.
Right.
I just didn't want any of that. I just
Right.
wanted it back the way it was.
Exactly.
And not have to live that life of that change. I didn't like the new life.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that now there's so many resources out there, because I know when we first lost our siblings, like there really wasn't a whole lot out there. I even remember,
Facebook.
well, and I also even remember going into Keith's basement before the sibling group was really starting to form, and I remember just feeling a little out of place, like we're all just struggling to. There's nobody that's experienced loss down the road. We're all just here after a year, and we're all just fumbling around, and we don't have any frame of reference for health and well-being, and so so that is what really forced me into just kind of learning more about yoga and meditation and essential oils and all of that stuff, because I needed to learn it for myself so that I can go help other people with it.
Heal yourself and teach the world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Any thoughts on this, Kevin?
Well, I see what for me it was. I really hated the feeling that people were pitying me.
Yeah.
I hate that, and that really bothered me. And like I said, on the previous episode, I grew up in a small town, and the feeling of walking into, of course, I was just turning 21, so I was just going out to the bars and the restaurants and that kind of stuff, and that feeling of walking into a restaurant or into a bar, and all the heads turned.
Yep.
And it was like, oh, look at that poor guy. That's sad. Hated
Me too.
that. I hated that, and
there's
that's
the family that lost the son.
Yeah, there's that.
Right?
There it is. I hated that being that guy. I hated it, and so what I did is, I moved away when I was 21, and I became a comedian. And now when I go back home and I enter the bar, everybody's heads turned because I've been a comedian for 20 years, and there's the guy who went on. The small town guy who's gone on and done these things, and we've read about the paper, and we've seen him on TV, and that, like, now they're looking at me on my terms.
Right.
And it's not
I like that.
because I was determined I was not going to live my life having people pity me. And
I was the same in our town. I found that people would look at us weird, and they'd also avoid us.
Yeah.
And so we got a puppy. That sounds really weird, but part of the reason it was is 'cause people would come up because they wanted to see the dog.
Right.
Yeah.
It was all about the dog. Instead of running away, they'd go up to and they wouldn't talk to us about what was going on usually, but they'd pet the dog, and it's like, okay, this works.
It was a really strange thing. I mean, my mother would say that too. Like, she would see people in the grocery store, see her from the end of the aisle and go the other way, just because they didn't want to. 6 months, a year later, didn't want to have that awkward conversation and all that, and so I think that's been good with my family as well, is that now when people talk to them or something, it's about me and what I just did and what. So it really became a positive out of that whole negative.
Yeah, I agree. We want support, but we don't want pity.
No,
And we don't want people to
Right.
say, oh my God, I could never deal with that. I don't know how you went through that.
Right.
I don't know how you can live.
Yeah, right?
I wouldn't be able to live. I would just kill myself.
Yeah, those are not helpful
So now,
comments.
is it the fact that I didn't you kind of, what message is that? Like,
I just went to a conference in Midtown on sudden death and traumatic losses, which we've all had here, and it said the number one thing, according to the research, that is helping people is peer support. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting with people that have been there and gone through it, and sharing, and like you said.
I have kind of said many times, and I hope it doesn't come across the wrong way, but I feel that somebody that went to school and read it in a book is not going to be able to tell me how I should feel or how I feel is normal. Really, the people that helped me, and ironically, Jordon was one of them, was early on meeting other people, other siblings that lost a sibling. Just having conversations and definitely being around others that lost siblings was what helped me.
Yeah, you can't put all losses in the same pile. I mean, statistically speaking, we are supposed to spend 80 to 100% of our lives, of our lifetime, with our brothers and sisters.
Sure.
And we got gypped. I mean, we didn't.
Yep.
So you're supposed to take the journey with them, like you have. So, okay, so last minute things, we're kind of wrapping up here, right, Jordon?
Yep. I think, the fact that we are taught that we're going to be living with our siblings our whole lives and then have them ripped away from us the way that they have, I don't think people that haven't gone through that type of a loss really have any understanding of how much it affects your entire life. And I think that we go out of our way to try to placate other people, to not let them see just how devastating it is, that when we do even show them a peek of it, it's like really scary for them. And it's hard for them to relate, which I think in turn makes us kind of retreat a little bit from being that open. I think being able to find a way to have a vocabulary and a way of talking about it takes time, takes a long time to feel comfortable doing that. And I think for me, that was what stood in the way of me really being open to being emotional about it in my private life.
Yeah.
I don't think I really had a way to get in touch with how I really felt about it until I started to really be open to exploring that.
So if people out there have more questions and want to find you guys, how do they do that?
Facebook, private group, Sounds of the Siblings. We have a private group.
And you're the moderator for that,
Yep,
right?
absolutely. Just
Sounds of the
request.
Siblings.
Yep, Sounds of the Siblings, private group, Facebook, yeah.
Or you could find me on Facebook as well, Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki. Just send me a message and I'll add you. I do a lot of information with yoga and exercise and essential oils through Facebook.
I love that.
And KevinBartini.com is my website. It's a one-stop shop.
All right, and I have two websites. I have JordonFerber.com, and you can also go to where'sthegrief.com to get my podcast, and all things Jordon Ferber.
I love it. Well,
Right.
thank you guys. I love that we've had this conversation. I think that I'm going to basically pass this show along to anybody that wants to understand guys in grief,
Sure.
because you guys are great role models. Big boys do cry, Jordon.
Sometimes.
Okay, thank you for watching Open to Hope. You can find us at opentohope.com, and all these guys and me want you to know that, say it, Jordon, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. Thank you.
You don't need enough hope to get through the day. You don't need enough hope to get through a year. You just need enough hope to get through the next moment.
Even though we had this thing happen to us, it also happened for us.
We hold the memories of those that we cared for, that were a part in the making of our characters. And when they pass, those memories will come back when you need them. They become voices of intuition and of guidance.
We want to be a lifeline for somebody else. We want to inspire others and say, we know what it's like to be where you are, but you're not always going to be there. Just take our hand, believe us. We'll take the journey with you.
When life presents 1,000 reasons to mourn, show life that you have 1,001 reasons to smile.
We get through this one breath at a time. We don't do it a day at a time. That's healing. That's positive, and that's what the world wants to talk about.
People die. Love doesn't die.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.